Welcome to the African Alumni Association. My name is Henry Sally, and this is a discussion regarding the next elections, which are happening on Monday, September 20th. For those of you who are not Canadians, we do have a federal election happening on Monday, where Canadians will be given an opportunity to choose their next prime minister. But before we delve into that conversation, we wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto African Alumni Association operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land for the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across the Turtle Island. And we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. Of course, I have a few people who are following us. I have panelists in the studio who are going to be engaging in this discussion. Very important discussion, especially for the immigrants of this country, specifically Africans, who tend to not engage in these conversations. We do think that these conversations are important, and we encourage you to follow what happens in the political houses because they determine your lives. They determine who succeeds in this society and how they succeed. We want you to succeed, therefore we encourage you to engage in these conversations. In the studio today with me is Fatma Kamenge, who is an investment consultant. She will be introducing herself shortly. We do have David Muanguzi, the CEO for New Level Entertainment and a small business proprietor. He will also be introducing himself. And we do have a familiar face in the studio again, the Honorable Faisal Hassan. Most of you know him as the Member of Provincial Parliament representing York Southwestern. He is also going to introduce himself, and they are going to be telling us what their thoughts are as we head into the elections on Monday. I'm going to ask the Honorable MPP for York Southwestern to be the first one to introduce himself. Honorable Hassan.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And my name is Faisal Hassan. I'm your member of Provincial Parliament. If you live in the Great Riding of York Southwestern, I was elected the general election of June 7, 2018. And I'm also a member of the official opposition, the New Democrats, and also co-founder of the Black Caucus for the first time in the history of the Ontario legislature that a party could have enough members to form a Black Caucus. And I'm also the official opposition's youth opportunities critic. And Henry, I'm looking forward for this afternoon's discussion.
Thank you so much, Honorable MPP. We are delighted to have you here today. Fatima, who are you? And we're excited to be here today.
I'm very excited to be here today. Fatima, I am a resident of the University of Rosedale Riding, and I am very, I think like many Canadians, taken aback by the quickness of this election and how much we all have to make decisions that are very important at this time. And I am excited to have this conversation, especially as an immigrant, around the issues that matter to us.
We're excited to have you. Always a pleasure to hear your thoughts about different issues around us, especially.
Absolutely. As you can tell, I have incredible amounts of plants behind me, so the environment is very important to me, of course, as social justice when it comes to Black and Indigenous peoples of this land. So I'm looking forward to really delve a little deeper around what each of the parties brings to the table when it comes to those particular issues.
Excited to have you. And of course, the environment has been a big issue that is influencing a lot of decisions as we head into next Monday to decide who should be our next prime minister. This is a conversation that is needed. Of course, issues of inclusion and diversity have also surfaced. Issues of reconciliation, they have also been part of this debate. We need to find out if all our voices are included in these debates. David Amza Muwanguzi, it's a pleasure to have you. I know you are a businessman, so a proprietor for small businesses. You are the CEO on Unilever Entertainment. But what do you want the people to know about you and why you're excited about this election?
Thank you, Henry. Thank you, University of Toronto. And thank you to the Mississauga indigenous people. So I'm very excited about, I'm not excited about this election because this was a snap election. I have some questions about the whole system. And I'm happy to discuss, since we have a minute. I would really love to discuss definitely my important points are the environment and immigration.
Right. And of course, all these conversations are part of
not forget small businesses.
Small businesses, very interesting. When you talk about small businesses, you sound like you're one who is going to vote for. Anyway, let us get into that conversation as soon as we can. Amza's stepped off a little bit. I think the internet is disturbing him, but he will be joining us shortly. Delighted to
join
have
him on the small business question
about that
as well.
I know. It's okay.
Sorry about that. My apologies.
Yeah, delighted to have you back, Mr. Muwanguzi. You ended on the question of small businesses. Sounds so much like you want to endorse a certain platform, but we shall hear from you and we shall engage in this conversation. Just to give some people who are following us some context of why there is an election, why it's happening at this moment in time, I'm going to play a clip from Elections Canada that highlights why there must be an election right now.
We are confident that we will have the public safety measures in place so people can participate, but there's certainly a lot of concerns.
COVID numbers are climbing again, and so is public anxiety, according to polls. But the election is going ahead anyway.
Whether you mail in your ballot or head to the polls in person, make sure you make your voice heard. Have your say.
18 million people voted in the 2019 federal election, very few of them using mail-in ballots. This year, Elections Canada expects at least 2.3 million to vote that way, even if COVID is well under control. If there's a strong fourth wave and lockdowns, that number could rise to 5 million. That has consequences for the individual voter who needs to act earlier if they want to vote by mail.
It's also important to note that by law, electors who apply to vote by mail cannot simply change their mind later on and vote another way.
When a person applies to vote by mail, they're struck off the list of people who can vote in person. They can still vote on the day if they have to, though, by swearing an oath.
Now, I know that Canadians are used to getting complete results on election night.
With perhaps 100 times more mail-in ballots than the last election, counting is going to take a while.
In most locations, this should be done within 2 days, but in some districts, it could take as long as 5 days, depending on the volume and the distribution.
Elections Canada promises twice daily updates as the count proceeds. A COVID wave could bring other problems too, as it did in Newfoundland and Labrador's election in March, when poll workers refused to show up. Polling stations will have COVID measures, including a new pencil for every voter. They could also be in unfamiliar locations this year, as some traditional venues, particularly schools, may not be available. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Chelsea, Quebec.
All right, that is CBC News, as you have heard. That's a clip that was adopted from the CBC News, The Nation, of course, discussing why the election must happen, how it's going to be conducted by Elections Canada, and some of the strategies Elections Canada hopes to use in order to ensure that people vote without endangering their safety. What are your thoughts on this election? Should it have happened now? And do you think everyone is going to feel safe when they go to the polls to vote? Of course, they said that in 2019 there were 18 million people who voted. Actually, it was about of course 17.7 million people. So I think they rounded up the number to 18 million. At the time, over 25 million registered voters were supposed to engage in the election. So from 25 to about 18 million people who voted, chances are that there's going to be about the same amount of people that are going to engage in this election. So if it was 25 million voters last time, it's probably going to be about the same, either 25 or 27. And we anticipate that if people actually engage in this election, about the same number of people will show up to vote. So about 18 million people, or 18 or 19. That means Elections Canada, for people who are going to actually head to the polls and vote, there's enough pencils for each and every one to vote without contracting COVID-19. Your thoughts, the MPP, why don't we start with you? You understand this process very well, being an active representative of our community. So tell us what you think. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, thank you. That's a very good question, Henry. And I think that we are in the middle of a fourth wave. And if you look at the parliament was working fine, and I didn't agree, this election to occur in the middle of a fourth wave. The parliament, especially Jagmeet Singh, was working very well with the current minority, with the Liberals, and other parties were doing the same thing as well. But the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, wanted more power, and therefore he's risking a lot in terms of the health of the public. And I think expecting also to say that about 5 million will be voting on a mail ballot. That was not the case. And a lot of people really want to go, and also traditionally go with their family to vote in election day. They want to walk to the polling stations and also cast their ballot instead of doing like the mail and things like that. A lot of people might not comfortable with that. But the question here is, do we need an election at this time? My answer is that no, and the parliament could have worked even until we come out of the pandemic. But because wanting it more power, the Prime Minister have called this election, and here we are on Monday. We have to make a decision.
On Monday, we must make a decision. Mr. Mwanguzi, I know that the environment issue is very dear to you, and it has probably influenced your voting. We have been seeing a lot of conservative wave, but at the moment, the polls say that it's head to head with the conservatives and the liberals. When we're having a discussion earlier in the week, you told me right now, even though you often lean left wing, you are likely going to cast your vote for the liberals in order to ensure that the conservatives do not come in. When you're introducing yourself, you also intimated that you disagreed with the decision to get into an election right now. What are your thoughts on the fact that the election is going on, and what are some of the conversations that have influenced your decision before Monday?
I'm sorry I didn't hear most of your
Do you hear us?
Hear you. I can hear you. I can. I, hello.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm the only one who's having trouble hearing you. I'm not sure if other panelists are hearing you. It seems Fatma isn't hearing you as
Okay.
well. Neither does the MPP, Faisal Hassan, is hearing you. So, are you able to hear us?
I'll have to switch. I think I'll have to switch to another gadget
Yeah,
so that
switch to another gadget.
I
Yeah,
That'd be a good idea.
yeah, you can use your phone as well if the computer is
okay, yeah.
misbehaving.
Okay.
Fatma, what are your thoughts? I know you're undecided, but you have also intimated about environment being one of your very dear issues to you. And I know earlier on in the week you were undecided. You didn't know who to vote for. You're asking me whether
I
I should
chose
vote?
not to disclose that information. It doesn't mean I don't know what I am. A woman of opinions and I have them.
Right,
I choose to
right,
keep them
right.
for myself.
Okay.
But here are the things that, for me, the first question you asked to the honorable MPP was, well, this is fast, this is happening now. I do believe that Trudeau, the prime minister, struck the iron while it's hot. He had great numbers, and he figured that this would be the right time for him to be able to come to the Canadian population and ask them what they thought about him. This is a way, also a referendum based on his performance because of the pandemic. So I believe that as a politician, this is the right move. When it comes to the issues that I care about that are immediately related to that, we people who live in Canada are exhausted. The pandemic has been hard on us. And I think that mental health, as many of the platforms for all the parties have shown, has been now brought into the forefront for all of us. And I think that having another stressor, another election is not necessarily the thing to do right now. But at the same time, it is definitely important for us to be able to make decisions that bring us to the future. The environment is incredibly important. The pandemic also is partially as a result of what we've done as humans to this planet. So looking forward and trying to do something that is a bit more concrete towards reducing the harm that we do, and then turning it around and actually starting to repair and mitigate the harm that we do in every single day. That's incredibly important. My work is an impact, which also includes, of course, economic, social, and environmental aspects of business, which Mr. Hamza, being a businessman, understands the fact that business is really the backbone of most of society. And of course, that is also incredibly important. So I care about each of the platforms that are being brought upon, and I care about how the government has been acting and what has been happening when it comes to not only my writing, but also the federal level. So those are the issues that I really care about. And those are the things that I'm looking at and listening to on the campaign trail to try and hear anything that is concrete from any of the candidates.
Listening carefully to try and hear some of those sentiments are being mentioned. Welcome back, Amza, to this conversation. If you can make your phone horizontal so that it can look better. I know, never mind. I know, it's okay. Okay, yeah. So, what are your thoughts? We weren't hearing you earlier, but do you want me to repeat the questions again?
Oh, yeah, yes. Thank you.
So we were discussing, of course, I asked the initial question was whether the election was needed at this moment in time. But now that it's already on, do you think, first of all, it was needed? Number two, are the people going to vote safely? as they go into these elections? And what are some of the issues that you are looking at critically that are going to influence your decision on Monday?
Oh, thank you, Henry. Well, the election was not necessary. It was not necessary. Number two, I don't think we can be really safe because right now we're entering a fourth wave. And with the Delta variant out there, I don't think they can really get the numbers. They can really get the numbers to come down. Well, when they're telling people to gather in public spaces and vote vote in all those gymnasiums, and I don't think it's really safe for people yet. And as the numbers are going up, it was a very bad idea from our prime minister. I'm a Liberal supporter, and I've always supported the Liberal, but my right now my most important points for this election have been is the environment, because the more the more you read into what's happening in the world, the population increase, how we're consuming a lot of resources, and all these resources we're using fossil fuels at alarming rates. All this urbanization, like people have to be fed all these cows, and these cows produce. They meet a lot of uh, uh, anyways, the thing is, environment is big for me, and I would want to add another one, which is immigration.
Right.
Immigration is very important to me because I would want to be in a place where I am wanted and my people are wanted.
Right.
So anybody that supports immigration, most of them right now are saying, but I look at track record. I look at what most of the platform has been. I know the New Democrats and the Liberals have always been consistent on immigration. They accept immigration. So now there I am.
There you are. Thank you so much, Mr. Mwanguzi. Honorable MPP, your
Yes.
thoughts as Hamza's and Fatuma have intimated. What are your issues? I know you are NDP. I know you represent York Southwestern on at the provincial level, and I know you have been a very active MPP, despite the fact that you are actually a new MPP. You have been very active, and you have put the Ford government on tenterhooks to ensure that they serve the people. What are your thoughts as we head into the federal elections?
Well, I think very good. I was just listening intently to Hamza and Fatima, and I think that, yes, there was an opportunity first and foremost that the Prime Minister to work with others. He had an opportunity to get things done. And important issues here in York Southwestern, of course, is the same stories that Hamza and Fatima is talking about, and that is support for small businesses, climate justice, racial justice, economic justice, housing, issues of childcare and seniors. And I think Hamza also talked about immigration. And I think he mentioned about Liberals have been consistent with regards to immigration. The Liberal immigration project is a complete failure when it comes to the African or Black communities, when you look at it. And if you have watched also a documentary about who lands or who gets in, this documentary was created by the CBC in the 90s, and that they had two case subject. One was from Nairobi, Kenya, and also one was Hong Kong. So they were comparing the decisions of the Liberals and the Conservatives were making at that time and who they want to immigrate to Canada. And there are cases in Africa, for example, they only had one immigration officer for close to 50 states. And he was stationed in Nairobi. And there was a young man who was from Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, who was the bodyguards of the former president there. And then he fled because he was ordered to shoot prisoners, and his conscience would not allow him to do that. So he fled to neighboring country, Kenya, where he immediately, because he was a French speaker, and then he mastered quickly the English within 6 months. He was able to accepted by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees for the legal protection for as being a refugee. And then they requested Canada for immigration. He was very successful being interviewed by that immigration officer who was responsible for over close to 30 countries. Imagine. And the documentary actually interviewed that Canadian immigration officer, and he said, and what he said was that this young man is the person we need in Canada, but you know, he learned English language within 6 months. He's a young guy who is really will immediately integrate in Canada easily. But he says, my mother in Kingston, you know, if she sees this young man, she's going to have a heart attack because of the way he looks. And because of being black, I decided not to allow him to immigrate to Canada. And then they compared to Hong Kong, where there were no questions asked, people were just allowed to immigrate. And I think the case of and this also will be the progressive conservatives and the liberals, their case with regard to immigration when it comes to African and the Caribbeans is completely and utterly failure. They do not really give them an opportunity to immigrate to Canada and contribute here. And that's where I think Hamza, even though he says he's a liberal supporter, he has to look about their record. Maybe when they speak, when they campaign, the liberals, they do campaign from the left, and when they are in government, they govern from the right. And that has been their record in that regard. But also, at the moment, this government had an opportunity to deal with issues of childcare. They have been promising over 30 years to get it done for 30 years. They haven't done so. So with housing also is a crisis in not only my community, but across the province, and they haven't done it. And if I just may talk a bit about that history also in housing, in 1996, John Chrétien, who is a liberal prime minister, and also Paul Martin, who was also a short period a prime minister, they have actually downloaded housing into the responsibilities of provincial governments, and they said they have nothing to do with it. And from there, here in the province of Ontario, as you know, then was the premier of Mike Harris and Ernie Eves and Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne, both liberals, you know, and conservatives, have also downloaded housing issues into municipalities. And now is where we have the crisis, for their record has not been consistent when it comes to immigration, when it comes to childcare, when it comes to seniors issues, housing, the climate, racial justice, and economic justice. And this has also been spinned by the media that the liberals are the only alternative in this election. And I say that it is not. And I think educating the Africans and the blacks and folks from the Caribbean, even though many of them have a fond of Pierre Trudeau, whom they say that he has been, welcoming, especially from the Caribbean communities. But still, you know, the Liberal Party is not the Liberal Party of Pierre Trudeau, and Justin Trudeau is not his father. So completely different party, and that's why I think this election is very important. He has been given an opportunity in 2015 when people said we don't need him to have an experience because we know Pierre Trudeau, and by giving an opportunity, he will learn at the job. He had 6 years opportunity to do this is right. We have seen his experience with regards to the rights of women. You know, we have seen about also the black community. He has been promising things, but he is not getting things done. And I think that's time. I think the voters also hold him accountable for this record, and also have also see other options available to you.
look at other options available to you. Mr. Mwaguzi, can I give you an opportunity to rebuttal those conversations, that submission, given that your thoughts are that the Liberals and the NDP have consistently had a similar policy to immigration. Mr. Honorable Hassan is saying that no, that is not completely true. The fact is that the Liberals tend to campaign from the left and govern from the right, which means they haven't been consistent. And he is challenging you to have a look at other options other than the Liberals when you're heading into the polls. Do you want to respond to Honorable Hassan?
Well, thank you, Honorable Hassan, for your insight. When I look at the New Democrats, the New Democrats have always been a third party. So I'm just wondering, so when is it that we are going to feel comfortable? Because the New Democrats have all these ideas that are good for mostly educated and immigrants and people that will, people like myself. But when is it that you guys will be a main party, right? And the thing is this, why I'm asking this, because we've had always two parties, right? And I'm not so sure. I heard that the New Democrats had a chance during is it Mike Harris? I wasn't in Canada then, but is it Mike Harris? And I heard that they fairly did as they were as they were when they were given a chance. When you guys were given a chance, you did not perform as you were supposed to perform. That's why I'm saying if we give Justin Trudeau a chance, maybe they give him 4 more years. We will judge him according to history.
Right. So, first of all, I think the NDPs have never been given an opportunity to govern at the federal level. They have governed at the provincial level.
Yeah.
They have governed at the provincial level, and I think they have done an incredible job according to some historical writings.
But Henry,
Harris,
if I just quickly respond to Hamza quickly, and Hamza says that
very quickly, because I don't want to alienate the only
absolutely. The question, I think he said that the New Democrats has always been the third party. That is incorrect. We have been also the official opposition in the Orange Wave under the leadership of Jack Layton. Yes, that's correct, and also under Mulcair as well. And that has been the case, and also the Liberal Party has been also a third party in many instances. In this case, 2011 in the House of Commons, the Conservatives have been also a third party as well in that regard. So there has been history of the New Democrats have gotten things done, and historically, as you know, that the public health that was done under Tommy Douglas and David Lewis under the leadership of the CCF and the New Democrats. So the New Democrats have contributed significant things you think that have done the Liberals. It came from the New Democrats, such as employment insurance, pension, and talk about also what is now, our identity of being a Canadian, being also having a public health, which also needs to be improved. So I'll end there quickly.
Fatma, I'm so sorry that I'm bringing you in late, very late, but I know you have very insightful responses to all these submissions, keeping in mind that we actually have 5 parties in this election.
Yes.
So I wonder why right now we're only talking about 2 or 3. I think we need to incorporate all the 5 parties. So there you go. There you have it, Fatma.
Well, I think there are many discussions going on in many homes in Canada right now. And I think the discussions sit with, do I vote strategically or do I vote according to what I believe? And unfortunately, for many people who vote, they end up voting strategically because of the fear of the other. Whatever they vote, conservative, liberal, or NDP, or whatever they often vote strategically, because at the end of the day, it is the fear of the other that leads people to choose. Not everyone, but many people choose based on that. When it comes to platforms and who campaigns what in what way and governs in what way, unfortunately, we don't know how the NDP governs, because they've been historically the party of the opposition. And it often sounds to me like, even in the campaign language is very much the campaign of the opposition. And that is not very appealing to me as a decision maker. And then if we're giving people chances, might as well go green. Like, if we're going to start doing that, might as well go green. I do like that platform. It's much more interesting to me. And as the environment being quite high, and being one of the only party that actually mentioned in their platform that they would like to end the clean water mandates for the indigenous people, that's kind of important to me. So yeah, if we're going to give people a chance, let's go green. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. I would actually love to hear from both the Honorable MPP and Hamza, why the campaign, even the platforms, are so vague. I mean, the Liberals have a bit more things that are a little bit more clear cut, but at the same time, it's very vague and easy to wiggle yourself out of. So for me, it's like, who's saying what?
Who is saying what? Are your campaign platforms vague, Honorable MPP and Hamza?
Well, I think Fatuma talked a very important and posed actually a very important question. Do I believe, do I vote what I believe, or do I vote strategically? And I think that's a fundamental question where every member of this community and also voters will be asking themselves on Monday. But I want also to remind Fatima that when you hear voting is strategic, it's also synonymous with liberal. And I think you have to be very careful on that, because you need to vote who is going to solve your problems, because voting is about representation, and you want also somebody who is going to speak for you, not somebody who will not speak for you, or when they're elected are not available to you when you want them to speak to you, or also deal with your issues. Fatima talks about the NDP hasn't been in government. Certainly in federally, we have been very effective in a minority government where we got things done. As I mentioned, employment insurance, pension, healthcare. These are great things that have impacted Canadians that the New Democrats have actually gotten in a minority government. So actually voting in a minority government and giving also more seats with the New Democrats in this coming parliament will actually address the concerns you might have. But also to also talk Fatima's concerns about the New Democrats have been actually governing many provinces across coast to coast to coast. And there have been a track record of actually getting things done in the province of Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and also even Alberta and BC, and even in Ontario and many other, also Nova Scotia. There has been also things that are very progressive. Was the only New Democratic Party, and if you look at it, the record. Of course, we're not saying we are perfect. We are not saying we have all the ideas, but definitely we have a progressive record, and we do believe we are the only progressive alternative in this election. And yes, the Justin Trudeau has been 6 years as a prime minister, and he could have actually solved the problems that Hamza talked about, immigration, which is also historic. Systemic barriers and discrimination when it comes to people who looks like Fatima and Hamza that have been denied opportunities to immigrate. The Liberals have been part of that systemic structures that have implemented deeply rooted in our governance. And I think there have been some also hope there, but I think we can do better with the New Democrats getting things done.
Getting things done. But one of the questions that you haven't responded to that was that was posed by Amza earlier on is the fact that you have always been either second or third at the federal level. He also mentioned that even though Bob Rae might have been an effective premier at the provincial level, when he went to federal, he actually crossed and went as a Liberal MP. What are you going to do as the NDP, either on the federal level or on the provincial level, to ensure that people do not cross from the NDP to the Liberals at the federal level because they have no hope of governing?
Well, I mean, that's not actually the reason. I think, as you know, Bob Rae, who has been a good man, to be honest with you, he has decent. He has also represented in the riding which I represented, not the whole riding of it, a proportion of it. He represented in York South, and as a premier, some people, might say time also has been different in the 1990. But I'll tell you that also Andrea Horvath is not a Bob Rae. But also Bob Rae has also impacted significantly in many things in my community. He has built co-ops here. He has supported people, and some of them also seniors. And I've also visited many seniors that he has been instrumental building those places. And after him, actually, there hasn't been any housing developed across federally or provincially. So he has been some positive things he has done, but also he has been a good public servant. But I think individuals, can do whatever they want. They can cross whatever they are. I mean, you've seen many conservatives crossing to the liberals and liberals crossing to the conservatives. There is nothing you can do about that. But I think the New Democrats, there's a lot of bias also I see here. And this comes also the liberals saying that, the New Democrats does not have a track record of governing. We do have that. You have to look at it, the history. You have to also look at it also in the House of Commons. Things that the new, Tommy Douglas, who is the father of public health care, has done a lot of things as the leader of the CCF and also New Democrats, and also David Lewis and others who've governed, who have also been a partner in a minority government. So in a minority governments also really it gets things accomplishes a lot in that regard. But I see also that a bias, a lot of new immigrants, because they might not study the history of these movements and things they have accomplished. And the liberals takes credit and they say we've done this, we've done that, but which is half truth. But also, you also look at it, the liberals, they will simply govern from the right and also harm. Case in point, also, if we talk about the record, in 1990, John Critchere, the employment insurance is money that you contribute to when you don't have a job. It's insurance for the workers. And what did he do? He took all the insurance, EI insurance money that was sitting there and says he's going to balance the deficit, thereby also doing a lot of cuts. And that created a lot of problems, especially housing where we are today. That was the problems the liberals have done. And we talked about also the trickle down with also the Mike Harris and Emily Eves and Dalton McGuinty and Captain Wynne. If you study, you really see the liberals have been where we are today because they have an opportunity to do things and put people first. They haven't. And case in point is the last 6 years, where Justin Trudeau has an opportunity, a majority government he had the last 4 years. He said himself he was a feminist. And we have seen these strong women leaders who had a different opinion of that. We have seen also himself painting black on his face, simply insulting all of us, but not actually implementing also a legislation to empower a black community or women in general.
Right. Well, why don't we get into evaluating the behavior of the voters right now, or the people who are listening to these platforms? There have been a couple of insults, of course, some of them stemming from the pandemic, and there have been a couple of reactions from the politicians. I wonder what the reactions from you guys, the voters, are. But before that, why don't we play this clip?
And to directly answer your question, yes, I felt some of that gravel, but I am staying focused not on me on this, but on how we make sure that everyone who isn't surrounded by security guards and well-wishers who have my backs everyone who is walking into a hospital on their own for a late night shift, who's worried about some anti-vaxxer that might come scream at them and try and rip off their mask. Those are the people that I think about. Those are the people I want to defend from being tossed gravel at, from being spat on, from having someone tug at their mask or just make them feel terrible as they're going in for an 18-hour shift to save the lives of people who themselves chose not to get vaccinated.
Can you take us through your account of what happened as you left the whistle stop yesterday in London, Ontario? Did you feel the gravel being thrown at you by protesters? And do you consider this an act of assault?
Let me be very clear and state the obvious first and foremost. It is absolutely unacceptable that people be throwing things and endangering others at a political rally. There were volunteers and supporters. There are police officers there to keep everyone safe. There were journalists such as yourselves doing a really important job informing Canadians of what's going on in this election and some of the tensions that are out there. Nobody should be doing their jobs under the threat or under the threats of violence or acts that put them in danger. That's absolutely unacceptable. But it's not just at political rallies that this is happening. There are healthcare workers across the country who are getting hassled and intimidated and bullied as they're going into work to keep people safe and alive. There are store clerks and waitresses and people going out there around their daily lives getting yelled at and pushed around for wearing masks, for being vaccinated. That's not how we do things in Canada. And quite frankly, as I continue to campaign, I am inspired by those people who continue to do the right thing in the face of anti-vaxxer mobs who are not respecting the basic science and the basic decency that Canadians have rightly come to expect from each other.
Mr. O'Toole, you spent more time in this room on this election campaign than anywhere else in the country, and you've been insulated from the kind of scenes that we saw confront the Liberal campaign last night in London. But when you do go out, we don't see those kinds of scenes at your campaign. What is it you think about Mr. Trudeau that attracts that kind of anger, now even violence, people throwing gravel at him, that you don't?
Well, let me repeat what I've said. It's completely unacceptable to see harassment of political figures, of media. We live in a great democracy, and let's act like we do. We can debate our ideas. I don't agree with the fact we're even having an election. I don't agree with Mr. Trudeau's approach on many things, but I respect his ability to be able to communicate with Canadians free of harassment, intimidation, and violence, and for our media to report on that. And we should remember the country we are, which is a great democracy, that we need to have an election that reflects that. We're trying to run in a pandemic election as safe of a campaign as possible. That's why we use our studio to talk about our recovery plan in person, in the studio, every day in a way that's safe and positive.
I want to ask you, first off, what you thought of the protest yesterday with Liberal leader Justin Trudeau and gravel getting thrown at him in London as he was getting back on the bus. Does this speak to the state of where we're at in this election? And what do you want to say to those protesters?
I think first of all, what happened is horrible. That should never have happened. And I'm worried about Mr. Trudeau, his family that may be on the bus, the media, the volunteers, his team. That should never happen. It is absolutely wrong. And I want to highlight there are a handful, a small percentage of very troubled people that are violently attacking people just for their views. Like, I disagree with Mr. Trudeau all the time, but it is absolutely wrong to be throwing stones. I mean, I can't imagine that I'm saying this in 2021, don't throw stones at people because you disagree with them. That is basic. That should not be happening. But these are some clearly troubled people who think it's okay to throw stones at someone. But they have to be taken seriously. So we got to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep our team safe. We've got to assess the security before we do an event. Sadly, because of people like this who are causing a real threat to the media that comes with us on the tour, to our volunteers, to our staff, to our team. This cannot happen, and we've got to be very careful that we don't allow us to be in a situation where this happens again.
All right, that's a clip from the Global News. And of course, they were talking about the behavior of the electors, the people who are listening to the conversations right now, despite the pandemic. I think that this campaign at some point evolved into something that is completely reminiscent of the Trump campaigns or the US elections. Do you think we are heading into that direction as Canadians? Fatima.
I mean, to sit down and ignore the fact that people are angry, people are tired, that this pandemic has been incredibly hard for many people, would be, I don't know, playing ostrich. And I don't think the people on this panel are that kind of people. People are angry. People feel hopeless. People feel like there is no solution for them. They don't feel heard. They feel ignored. They feel othered. They are isolated. We all lack connection. We all miss each other. And the more time we spend apart, the more we see the differences that we have with each other, as opposed to the what we actually have in common. So there is great things that happen in those times, in moments of hardship. It is the crucible of true character. It is when most big movements are actually born. But it's because people get to sit down and think and really look at their situation that they do that. Do I agree with violence? No. Do I understand that there are people who are so hurt that they feel like that's the only way they get heard? I understand that that might be the case. I believe actually in this moment, it is incumbent upon our leaders, our politicians, to really speak to the people, to tell us all that we're going to be okay, that we've got this, to give us solutions, to give us a plan that we can get behind. This is the moment of leadership for us, where we get to listen to our leaders, for them to tell us, just like the parents that we need in this moment, that we're going to be okay, to come up with solutions, to come up with concrete plans. Even in a moment of uncertainty, at this moment, what we need as voters, as people, as Canadians, as residents, is not hate, divisiveness, how we're different from this and different from that. It's, this is how we're going to take care of you. And that's what I wanted to hear more from the campaign. This is how we're going to take care of you. Not how this person did something wrong, this party did it. It's like, this is how we're going to come together and take care of you, because this is an unprecedented time and we get to come together. And I don't think the people who threw gravel, who are violent, heard that. They heard you're different. And I'm not excusing that behavior, by the way. But I'm saying that we need more love in this campaign. We need more love from government, from leadership. So that's my opinion on that.
Hamza, how are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't agree with I don't agree with violence, but I understand them. I understand people. Many small businesses have lost their way, and parents are losing jobs. They don't know how they're going to take care of their children. There's a lot that people are going through right now, and the pandemic, people are losing lives. In a community, we've lost a couple of people, due to the pandemic. So all this frustration is building up, and then we have an election which was unnecessary. I would have wanted them to fast fix what we're going through, then we go through an election. But this election, knowing that it costs a lot of money, it's really hard to swallow. It's a bitter pill to swallow. While small businesses are closing down, it's hard. It's really hard. And I don't know if the honorable MP will reiterate this to his colleagues, and I know he's very good in his constituency. He's going to go through, but I would want him to talk to his constituency, and I mean, to his colleagues in the parliament, and try to explain the frustration of people. Prices are going up. Why is gas going up yet we are working less? Why are all these things happening? Right? We have so many questions, right?
Right.
But there's no answer. So when these people, there's a, oh, they, like the French Revolution happened, people only have one way of dealing with things. I mean, they always have to revolt or whatever. But this was minimal. It wasn't that big. Canada is a great country. We cannot get to that part, but it's a message that needs to be heard, not just denied, but it needs to be heard. People need to be heard. Why are they frustrated and what is going on? Like all this, I mean, we just need to be heard.
We just need to be heard. Honorable MPP, I know you are a provincial representative, but I would like to hear your thoughts on the submissions done, made by both Fatima and Hamza.
Yes.
What are your thoughts, and are you ready to speak to your federal colleagues to listen to the people?
Yeah, I mean, Henry, I do agree, Fatima and Hamza, they have excellent points. And I think we are in the middle of a pandemic and there's no need for an election. People are angry. They've lost. I've been fighting, trying to prevent evictions in my community here. Many people, because it's not their fault, because they've lost their jobs. Things have been tough. A lot of members of our community lost their lives because of the pandemic. Many folks, small businesses, are no longer coming back. And all these people, and also we hear the report of the Premier has not even spent $2.7 billion needed to support the community when they need it the most. Yes, people are angry, they're frustrated, but also Justin Trudeau, in all due respect, he had an opportunity to listen to them and do something about the problems at hand, rather than just putting himself first and asking for a majority government. He could have worked together with the parliament, majority of them who are willing to work. I mean, that was then. Now, of course, we have to make a decision on Monday what we're going to do. But that's also something that's very important, that when you are in a position of leadership, you have to work with others. You know, I have been working with others as the member of the official opposition to put the community first and get their issues, making sure that we get results for them by working with others. And this is also an opportunity for the Prime Minister to do the same thing and work with the Jagmeet Singh and Aaron Toole and others to basically work the issues important. If he puts things on the table, things that the community needs support for businesses, for seniors, for housing, for social justice, for racial justice, for economic justice, and climate justice, then if they don't work with him, he could have said, you know, I put done A, B, C, D. They haven't done so on. He has no case to call for an election other than putting himself first and also asking the voters a majority government so that he could become a dictator. You know, as you know, a majority government is basically a dictatorship. And I always like a parliament that works for the people, and the best parliament is a minority parliament. Until we change the system we have, which is first past the post, which also doesn't reflect, you know, the actual representation. You know, he got less than 40% in 2015, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, and they got a majority government. 60% of the people didn't vote for them. So that's the system we have. Of course, we have to work with that. But I think when you are in a minority government, even if you have could worked with, again, until we come out of the pandemic and put things, you know, moving for the people, would have been better. But to me, it looks like, you know, people have been doing the right things. They have been asked to do the right things, and they have been continuing doing. You know, the frontline workers have risked their lives to save, and essential workers have been moving things and putting their families at risk. but they have not been provided support they needed when they asked support. And simply coming around and blaming others and not working with them, to me, it doesn't make sense at all. And it looks just that he's putting himself first, only to grab more power.
Only to grab more power. Of course, as the issues arose, we had debates going on. The leaders themselves had their own debate. And there were challenges, as most of you have already intimated. During the debate, a lot of blame were thrown to the current prime minister. And some of the conversations that transpired during the debate, in this clip that I'm going to share from the National Post.
Evan Dyer starts our coverage. So, Evan, those leaders won't be on the same stage again before Election Day. What were they up against?
Well, the format here, Adrian, was clearly designed to pit the 5 leaders against each other in a series of one-on-ones. But what happened really was that we saw Justin Trudeau become the main target of attacks. And some of those accusations became quite personal. Let's watch.
I do not believe that Mr. Trudeau is a real feminist. Thank you, Jane Philpott. Thank you, Jody Wilson-Raybould. Thank you, Selena Cesar-Chavez.
I think, Ms. Hall, you'll perhaps understand that I won't take lessons on caucus management from you.
And things also got personal between some of the other leaders when the debate turned to the issue of systemic discrimination.
I recognized the existence of systemic racism in June 2020. And then, what happened? It became a political tool against Quebec.
When I heard what Mr. Blanchette said, I invited Mr. Blanchette to get educated about systemic discrimination.
It's nice to want to educate
This
me.
is my time, sir.
It is.
Thank you.
So nice time to insult people.
That was not an insult. It was an invitation to educate yourself.
When the debate turned to China and the imprisonment of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, the Liberal leader found himself fighting off charges of inaction.
Canada's voice has been absent, Mr. Trudeau. We have not worked with our allies on Huawei. We have not stood up for the 300,000 Canadians in Hong Kong. We've not fought for the 2 Michaels, and we have to get serious with China.
If you want to let the Michaels and get the Michaels home, you do not simply lob tomatoes across the Pacific.
Throwing tomatoes might not be the solution, but I would submit humbly that doing nothing might not be the solution either. The Mr. Trudeau's record on human rights is not perfect.
On climate, Justin Trudeau accused the Conservatives of having a weak plan and the NDP of having no plan. They accused him of having plans he failed to turn into reality.
The cost of inaction is an entire town of Lytton being wiped out by a climate forest fire. The cost of inaction is forest fires and flooding and heat waves that mean Canadians lose their lives. 6 years and he failed you, and it cost all of us.
We need to talk about science. We need to talk about experts.
Absolutely.
We agree on that, you and I both. So how is it that the experts that have rated our plan on climate to be an A have rated your plan to be an F?
Experts?
I rate your track record an F, Mr. Trudeau.
So, Evan, the drama did not end with the debate. Tell us about that.
That's right, Adrian. In fact, those flashes of anger we saw there between Yves-François Blanchet and Annamie Paul continued afterwards in the media scrums, where Yves-François Blanchet essentially said the debate had been a pile-on against Quebec with accusations that Quebec society was xenophobic and racist, and he accused the other leaders of sort of acquiescing in those accusations, particularly Justin Trudeau, who he pointed out had declared himself a proud Quebecer in last night's debate, but he said failed to come to the defense of Quebec in tonight's English language debate. But we also saw some comments from other leaders about the format of this debate, Justin Trudeau and Annamie Paul in particular suggesting that they hadn't been able to say everything they wanted to say.
All right. Evan Dyer in Ottawa. Thank you, Evan.
Thanks.
All right. That's a clip from the CBC News. Of course, we share all these clips to educate our people. What are your thoughts on those sentiments? Do you think that the Prime Minister's record on human rights is inconsistent with the Canadian values? And what are some of your thoughts on other issues like the environment and immigration and foreign policy, actually, especially in regard to what is happening to the 2 Michaels who are still incarcerated in China, but also the issue regarding how the Afghan refugee issues has been handled. What are your thoughts on that? Why don't we start with the MPP, Honorable MPP?
Thank you, Henry. And I think that we have just seen the debate. And I mean, after, they were, the Liberals were blaming the format, a format which probably they've agreed to. And I think accountability is very important. And my understanding is that he has an opportunity to work with others to get things done, and he hasn't done so. And now he has to defend his record. But also, I think there are other ways he could have helped the Michaels, and he hasn't done anything. And that's also a legitimate point. He has been just waiting others to do something. These are Canadians, and they have also a family, and they have been away for too long. And he needed to do something, and he hasn't done anything about that. And this is the same thing of every file.
Understands the fact that business is with.
Now we have to defend his record, but also.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So. And that's also, I think, his record when it comes to, I think also the Green leader challenged him about himself calling a feminist. And I think that has also been strong women leaders have also spoken loud and clear. And you can't simply say, they are wrong and he's right. And I think that also shows they were part of his team and he could not work with them. And that tells you he puts himself first, and giving him another majority government will only make him another dictator.
Wow, this is an indictment on the Prime Minister. Fatima, what are your thoughts?
Strong language from the Honorable MPP of one of my favorite part of Toronto, actually. And I will not comment on that because I do not know the Prime Minister. I do not know if he wants to be a dictator. I do not think that majority governments are dictatorships. Coming from Burundi and other places, I've seen what dictatorships look like. And not that they don't come in multiple forms. Let's just say that for me, that's very strong language. When it comes to the looking at Justin Trudeau, he is the only person on that platform with a record to defend. So of course he is as a defensive, and he put himself in this position by bringing his record up for debate, by holding this election. That is exactly what he did. He said, here is what I've done. Please judge me. And that is exactly what's happening. I don't think there is anything surprising about people having questions about his record and what he's done and what he has failed to do and what he's promised and not necessarily delivered on. One of those things being voter reform, which I wish we could go back to that conversation as well. And that is clearly not happening. When it comes to his record as a feminist or as an anti-racist, again, I think the whole point is people grow as they are. I think we've all grown in the past 2 years. We've all had to learn a lot, especially as a community. And we've all learned to be a little bit more vocal, to be a little more expressive. And hopefully we can start working towards being better feminists, being better anti-racist. And I think we have the right to hold our Prime Minister to those standards because he represents all of us. When it comes to foreign policy, I am not in those back rooms. I am not there understanding what's happening behind the scenes in order to get people free. I do not know what actually is being done that is being brokered behind the scenes. I fail to imagine that nothing, absolutely nothing is being done. I assume that something is being done, but it cannot be discussed in the public. We are not in the back rooms of governments. Perhaps the Honorable MPP is and has more information about it than we do. But I would hope and assume that from the record of what Canada does when it comes to taking care of its people, that they're doing something better. When it comes to the refugee crisis, I think Canada has shown itself to be the place that opens its doors to many refugee populations. Judging from the amount of Burundians that I see around Canada these days, or the amount of Somalis or South Sudanese people, just keeping it East African right now, we Canada has been a place that has been welcoming for many of us, and I don't think it would turn away the Afghans, our Afghan brothers and sisters that are also coming through. I do believe that just like the Syrian crisis happened and Canada was the one to open its door to the most amount of refugees, Canada will continue to be the place that opens its door to the most refugees. Is the immigration process that is independent of the refugee process needing a lot of work? Incredibly. It is very racially skewed. And as the Honorable MPP said earlier, the gatekeepers themselves are the ones who have the bias. And I think it would be really important to then do something about the fact that the gatekeepers, the ones that do the interviews, should be re-educated, just like our police should be re-educated. A lot of our gatekeepers are a lot of our representative of our governments have very interesting information in their brain and operate from a place of bias that is not helpful to people of color. So for me, there is a lot of work to be done systemically, and we are allowed to ask for that. Do I think there's any of the parties out there that are actually providing a clear way forward with that? Not really. And it is true that the Honorable MPP has said that the Liberals promise a lot and then don't necessarily deliver. But I have to say that, yes, as a minority, as a party of opposition, NDP has been wonderful. At which point, guess it's good to keep you in the opposition. And so, but you work best when you're working with the Liberals. So let's pair you with the Liberals, apparently. That's the combo that seems to bring things together. I don't know anything else except the fact that right now, what's most important is how do we recover from this pandemic? How do we go forward as a people, as a community?
I'm going to give the Honorable MPP a few seconds to rebut to that submission, and then Mr. Mwangus can come in later.
Well, thank you very much. I think Fatima have touched many issues, and I think it's true that the debate reference was what have you done exactly to help the Michaels? And he is the Prime Minister, and he should have said he should share Canada what he has done, and that's where I think his failure of leadership comes in. You should be communicating exactly what he has done. And with regard to also gatekeepers, Fatima talks about, but those gatekeepers, they're only following policies instructed by the leadership, the government. And they're not just bringing up their own policies. They work for the government, and those policies are deeply rooted in systems that need to be dealt with, and it has to be dealt with. And I think also Fatima talked about the New Democrats working with the Liberals. In case in point, in the House of Commons, Jagmeet Singh and the strong the New Democrats there were working, getting things for during the pandemic, for COVID emergency benefit and others to help people. It was instrumental with the New Democrats working with the Liberals in that sense, and they were willing to continue work with them in the middle of the pandemic to get things done and moving things. But Justin Trudeau didn't even want it. In one point also, Jagmeet Singh, without even reading the budget, he committed supporting it, before even seeing what the budget holds it. That's how he wanted to really work with them so that they put the people first. And what do we get from Justin Trudeau? Justin Trudeau, he doesn't want to work with others. He just wants his own majority government. And I just want to also clarify, when I talk about dictatorship, I'm not comparing to the dictatorship in Burundi or anywhere else. I'm talking about a majority government. The way it is designed is that the Prime Minister has the power to do whatever he or she wants it. And that, to me, it's also dictatorship, where others are not part of it, especially the other members of the House of Commons, who are just shut down in debate. And majority government usually is like that. They act like a dictatorship. So I just want to clarify that. And that's also, we had an opportunity to really, the New Democrats in the House of Commons have shown, and the record is very clear, to work with them. So the question we ask is, why do we need an election in the middle of a pandemic? And why can't we not work with others? So it shows he's not willing to work with anybody. The question we ask is, if he doesn't get majority, what is he going to do? Is he going to work with others, or is he going to call another election until he gets a majority? And that's another, I think, contentious issue here. And I do believe that also those folks that Faduma sees coming into Canada. But think about it, how many folks who are in the refugee camps in Kenya and other neighboring countries has not been given an opportunity to immigrate to Canada, who could have done so much to contribute in this country. And that's also a case in point, which I'm not comparing to refugees from Syria, who have really, the Liberals have put a great effort even welcoming them into the airport, which is well deserved. But also there are many refugees in the Horn of Africa, or Eastern Africa, that are there for 20 years in refugee camps. What has he done about it? Ask them before you cast your vote.
Thank you so much, Honorable Hassan. Just a little bit to clarify more on your idea of dictatorship. Do you mean that majority governments in the first past the post system tend to weaken the accountability mechanisms in our governments? Is that what you mean?
Exactly, and I think it means that when first past the post shows for example, in 2015, when the Liberals under Justin Trudeau had a majority, they got less than 40% of the vote, and that gave them a majority government to do whatever they want. But 60% of the population didn't vote for them, and that shows then in the House of Commons that majority, they act as a dictatorship, because they can move whatever they want, and there's no mechanism. They shut down the debate, and so forth and so forth. They broke the parliament, and so that is another way of having a minority government in this system of first past the post will make it better that way. But I think that's another also a form of dictatorship.
Mr. Mwangus, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, about dictatorship, I mean, I come from a dictatorship, and I know what a dictatorship looks like. Yeah, I mean, it's good that the honorable MP clarified on that, but I know that a dictatorship is way worse than a majority government. Right, and on that point, I mean, I wanted to ask the MP when the BC, the NDP party has always promised unrealistic goals, as they say, on the CBC and most of the pundits. And we heard there the honorable Prime Minister tell the MP, the leader of the NDP, that his policies on when it comes to climate change would get an F. So why is it that NDP keeps these unrealistic goals that are unachievable? Is it because they're going to be a third party? They will always be the opposition?
I know, but how do you know that their policies are unachievable when they actually haven't governed? Because when you made a reference to federal governments that the NDPs have been governing in, he has shown you what the parties have been able to do. He has also referenced the healthcare bill that was initially initiated by the NDP, which hasn't been able to be implemented in the US, but is working in Canada. The healthcare system here was initially initiated by an MP from the NDP, I believe. But do you want to respond to that, Honorable MPP?
Change. When it comes to climate change, 50% reduction in emissions. They say that's a tough. I mean, it's really tough compared to considering that Canada relies on fossil fuels. That would be hard to achieve. and net zero by what is it? They said, oh God, I sorry, I forgot. I wrote it somewhere. But by net zero in, no, was it in 15 years or 20 years? I mean, it's really a tough target, and the student loan, elimination of student loan. How I mean, that's really, how achievable are all these things? I mean, all these I mean, some of these
suggestions. Yeah, so but like the thing is, if you're going to evaluate the NDP platform, you also have to evaluate the conservative platform, the Bloc Québécois platform, of course the NDP platform, but also the PPP platform, so that we can have a more inclusive debate.
Because right now, my peers, my peers, and people around me right now thinking of
Either NDP or okay,
and the
liberal,
the conservative. I mean, sorry, the conservative parties, and the two liberal parties. So, is it? How do we choose between the two liberal parties? Is will choosing one or the other hinder? I mean, just give an opportunity to the conservatives, because we know the conservatives always have a they always have a solid base in Midwest, and I mean some of those small towns. So we always ask ourselves, oh, I mean, is the NDP really ever going to get a chance?
Honorable MPP, tell the people why should they vote the NDP and
Well,
not the liberals?
I think this is a great discussion. I think Hamza has been listening, as he said, CBC, and the guest has been all liberals or conservatives. He only saw two perspectives there, and they will tell whatever they want, and they don't even talk about the NDP perspectives. And I've seen that this has been across the board for quite some time now for the media. And but I think also it's very important, if Hamza is looking for progressives, the New Democrats are the progressive in Canada and in Ontario, and also the climate gradings that Trudeau talked about. He said his experts graded him A, and now contrasters to the experts, but also Jagmeet Singh will tell you that also his experts graded him A. So now it's you now have to go and not just listen to these experts whom the guest is of telling you which party they in favor about their perspective. It is you now who should be now investigating on your own and reading all these things. And I'll leave it there for that. But also in terms of about the NDP with the voters, I do believe that the voters are the bosses. You, the voters, decide who you want to represent you. And it is not the media telling you who you should be voting. It is you who should be deciding who you want to govern and represent you. And think about it. This is not about it's not about the media. It's not about somebody else telling you how to vote. It is you, because the decisions they make, it affects you. Aside the propaganda, aside the spin, I think the you need to understand. You need first and foremost a representation. Now you ask yourselves, are you included? With the liberal structures of governance, do they solve your problems? Evaluate the last 6 years. Are you better off or you are worse off? These are the things you need, rather than just listening to the CBC or any other media telling you or bringing you the liberal point of view. And they just talk about, they invite the columnist from these or that, but these people are known to be liberal supporters. I can name them, but I don't want to name here. But it's also you. That's why many people now, they don't even have a television any longer, because they're fed up, because the media does not do a good job of balancing all perspectives. And now a lot of people are learning it quickly, but others have not, because you have been told that the New Democrats cannot form government, but they can form government if you vote for them. If you don't
Right.
vote for them, they won't. But if you vote for them, definitely they will form government. And that's also, you understand, you are the boss, not the media. So if you are the boss, then you act and take responsibility to evaluate and look all those perspectives and the issues and then compare yourself. I'm a businessman. Now, look at the New Democrats on the small businesses, for example. We have been fighting for mainstream. We have asked and demanded, especially in the provincial side, to provide support, direct support for small businesses. We have been asking this since the beginning, and finally we have been very successful, forcing Premier Ford to provide the first, and then the second round. Now we are arguing and fighting for a third round of support for small businesses, because small businesses are the businesses that are close to the community. They are really contributing so much because they help in charity. They are members of the community. We know who they are. They're one of us. And that's why we need to support them. And it's also been reported in many cases, they hire 80% of the jobs are created by small businesses and mid-sized businesses. So if we don't support them now, when are we going to support them? And these are the questions you need to ask the Liberals or the Conservatives or the New Democrat candidates. What are they going to do for you? Rather than just believing you simply vote the same way and expect the same results.
Talking about grading themselves. Of course, the media also came out and provided some of the grading from the parties themselves. So the parties, when they graded themselves based on the last debate. Of course, this clip is also from the CBC, the national, which has been labeled liberal. So, I'm just playing for
fairness.
for
fairness.
So,
for fairness, and we have
yeah, exactly. So these are the grades they give themselves.
Now, clearly, the party campaigns had definite goals going into this debate, so let's check the score. David Cochrane, also at the Canadian Museum of History in Gatineau. He's been talking to the political parties to see how they're spinning the night. David.
Yeah, Andrew, the Conservatives are feeling pretty good about the performance of their leader, Aaron O'Toole, tonight. They wanted to score some points against Justin Trudeau and present their plan more clearly to Canadians and show a path out of COVID and into recovery. They felt they were able to land a blow on Justin Trudeau on climate, of all things, by saying that he has ambition but no achievement. And they're quite happy that Mr. O'Toole was able to put affordability at the front and center of this debate tonight, having specific answers on how he'd help low-income people with policies like doubling the workers' benefit. Now, for the Liberals, Justin Trudeau has been facing questions since the start of this campaign about why he called an early election in the middle of a pandemic. He's been trying to make it about the stark contrast between what he calls divisive and dangerous Conservatives on one side and non-detailed and not serious New Democrats on the other side. He went after Aaron O'Toole, saying that his party members at their convention earlier this year voted against climate change even being real. And he said that the Conservatives weren't serious about getting the country vaccinated when they can't even tell you how many of their own candidates are vaccinated. And with Jagmeet Singh, it was that exchange we just saw in Evan's piece that he held up the fact that experts say that the Liberal climate plan is the best one on offer in this campaign, saying he got an A while Jagmeet Singh got an F. A sour note of frustration from the Liberals was in an exchange with Aaron O'Toole, where he accused Justin Trudeau of having a plan to tax people on the money they make on the sale of their houses. That is not the policy. In the Liberal platform, it says that is only a tax on house flipping designed to target people who juice the real estate market. But Justin Trudeau was unable to respond to that because he got cut off by the moderator. Now, finally, the New Democrats. They have a challenge over this stretch run of this election to stop wobbly progressive voters from abandoning them for the Liberals, as has happened in the election. So a lot of criticism of Justin Trudeau tonight from Jagmeet Singh, pointing out the things he never got done in his 6 years in office, the abandonment of pharmacare in the platform, saying how can anybody trust you on this, and making what they argue was his best point of the night, saying that you're looking at Aaron O'Toole and Justin Trudeau arguing over who's worse. Joking, that's a hard question to answer, but you don't have to be stuck with those choices. There is another option, as Jagmeet Singh tries to cement gains for the New Democrats on September 20th.
All right, from the Canadian Museum of History in Gatineau, David Cochrane, thanks.
course, we appreciate the CBC for letting us use these clips. Fatima, your thoughts on that? I know Mr. Honorable MPP are going to have a response to that, but let us start with the lady in the house. What are your thoughts on that grading?
I think when I was in kindergarten, I always gave myself an A. And it seems like politicians, in order to be a politician, one must keep that hubris that one has in kindergarten and continue grading themselves an A at all times. So am I surprised that everybody finds like they won? No. But at the end of the day, I think the Honorable MPP said it, Hamza keeps saying it, even Henry, you've said it a few times. At the end of the day, when we look at these debates, it's what are you going to do for us now? How are you taking us out of this situation? What is your real plan? And can we trust you? And I don't know if any of the people on that panel could actually be trusted when it comes to any of that. The ones that everybody says something, but doesn't necessarily deliver. So that is what we have. And at the end of the day, every voter will make a decision that is based on what is in their best interests. So that's where I stand on that. Everybody gets an A because everybody at the end of the day gets an F in my book. So.
Very interesting. Hamza, your thoughts on that before we go to the MPP?
Yeah, that's yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, most of the points Fatima said, that's very interesting. Yes, they'll give themselves A's. They'll give themselves all these distinctions. But the thing is, at the end of the day, with the way we're getting information, we are looking more into. I think we're at the stage where we're looking at of the lesser evil. So who will not hurt us more? And going this pandemic, personally, me and a couple of people I talked to, we're looking at more who will not damage this more. Because already we are down. So who will not destroy this a bit further? Who will not get us into more deep of a hole? That's what we're looking at.
Honorable MPP.
Well, thank you.
Your thoughts on that?
Yes, excellent. And I think that was excellent comment, Fatima and Hamza. And I think at the end, I could summarize it. There is an alternative out there. And the alternative is not the same way we have been voting again and again. But I think if we are looking for also getting your issues resolved, I think minority government would have been a perfect scenario. And Justin Trudeau had a minority government. He could have worked with everybody, you know. Instead, he wanted a majority government. And, you know, the question now is, if he gets a minority, is he going to work with others to put, you know, pharma care or dental care, and also putting also the climate justice, racial justice, economic recovery, and economic justice, housing, seniors, childcare, first and front and center. I think that's the question we asked ourselves. But if he's only looking for a majority so that he could do only what he wants it, not what we want him to focus, then that's also another opportunity missed, because this election is also costly. It will cost us over $500 million, you know, and that's another unfortunate. And also, I watch these panels all the time with CBC or with other networks. There's no diversity, you know. It's also the same people all the time telling us and trying to influence people. And I think we need also a different kind of media to also counter that.
And that's the reason why we do have this space for people like you and others who we think should be having these conversations, invited to come here to talk to our people directly. I'm pretty sure there are many immigrants, specifically Africans, who are listening to this conversation right now, and hopefully it will influence their decision to go and vote, at least participate into this conversation and the election at large. As we think about wrapping up this conversation, we know that minorities, specifically blacks and Africans in general, have been hit heavily by the pandemic. Many of the people in our communities are struggling financially, but they're also facing mental health issues. On top of the systemic racism that we face on a daily basis. When we look at the people who are campaigning to become our prime ministers for that matter, who do you think most represents yourself? And I know there's an NDP, there's also declared liberal. I know Honorable Hassan has been talking a lot about the importance of a minority government, while the liberal has been talking about mostly a lot about strategic voting. So we get those concepts put together. We know that when you talk about minority, you mean vote the NDP. When you talk about vote strategically, you mean the liberals. There's no conservative voice on the panel. I tried to reach out to a few people that normally want to vote conservative, but they were booked and weren't able to participate in this conversation today. I know we have two small business proprietors on the panel. I would think that they would be excited about the conservative platform, but unfortunately, they don't seem to be excited about voting the conservative. As we wrap up this conversation, what do you want to tell the people out there to encourage them to go and vote for the party that you're most likely going to vote for as well? What are your thoughts, starting with Mr. Amza? As a business person, you're not rooting for the conservatives. Why?
Person, I'm not rooting for the conservatives because there's a lot of distrust for the conservatives, especially that we're in a pandemic. The conservative platform has always been I'm never inclined. I've never leaned towards the conservative because I've always saw them. I've always seen them. As a party that does not accept people like me. I mean, they believe in small government and responsible spending. But at the end of the day, what about my people? I have to look at my people and people like me and people who will come behind me, right? So that's why I vote liberal, because liberal is the better of the two evils, and I think the liberal government has done good when it comes to the economy and small businesses. They've for the last 2 years, we've not been as a small business, we've not been working. I'm into entertainment, and I own a renovation company too. So, but it's been tough. But so far we've managed to survive. I had 5 employees, and I had to let them go. So because of the Liberal government, I'm looking at a way of giving them a chance to finish this, because I see a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe with 4 more years, we may, we're seeing a change, unlike changing the whole system to a conservative government, which will have to undo some of the progress that the Liberal has made so far.
Fatima, you are also a business proprietor. You are most likely not going to vote for the conservative.
Are you sure?
Most likely not going to.
You are not going to. You don't know what my mail-in ballot, which is something, by the way, that we have forgot to talk about. Mail-in ballots are something that are very available, and we're available. Could have said and what it says. I think that will make things safer and really much more convenient in terms of voting. I am in a very unique and wonderful situation. My writing, which is what I think everybody should look at, which writing they're in my writing, I get to have a provincial member of parliament who's NDP. A federal member of parliament who is liberal. By the way, both women. And I guess the conservatives are in power for me provincially, which means I guess we get to have something else. We should have the Greens in power, in my opinion. So since that's not happening, I don't know who anybody should vote for. However, all the parties here, whether or not they've been in power, have a track record. And we all have to see who has served us and our own needs and our own desires. I can't speak for the whole population of East African immigrants, but I think we all are people who have come here with a purpose to have our voice heard. We get to do that. So my real thing is vote. Whatever you vote, I don't care who you vote for, vote. And that is the thing that matters the most in this moment. It is not about pointing fingers. It's not about naming names, labeling, or doing anything of the sort. It's about figuring out how every single one of us can come together and make a difference in the way that we are and help each other, because we need help from each other more than any time. If the government will do what the government will do. But I think helping each other as we are, as business owners, as individual citizens, is where we get to come in and do something about it. Voting helps, and it really matters who is your leader. I'm lucky. I have wonderful people who are my leaders. So vote with your heart, vote with what you believe in, and more importantly, vote with your actions. Go out there, support your community, volunteer, donate, do what you think your government should be doing.
Do what you think your government should be doing. Most importantly, participate in this exercise, because if you don't participate, you do not have an opportunity to speak up because you haven't participated. Of course, man is a political animal, as Aristotle said. And what makes you a political animal is when you make associations and decide to align with certain values in order to propel your values, or to protect your values, or to prosper or to thrive. So participate in the conversation, participate in the political system. Honorable Hassan.
Thank you, Henry. And definitely, I do agree, woman representation. And I think my leader is a strong woman leader, Andrea Horvath. And our caucus, the Ontario NDP caucus, is also a gender parity. We have a 50% women and 50% men. And that's also a commitment that my leader and the entire New Democrat Party is committed, making representation across the board. And that's also something I share and agree with Faduma, that having a woman representation is very important. Our federal NDP candidate here in New York Southwestern is also a woman, Hawa Mire. And I know also that small businesses also, if you look at it, small businesses to us is very important. It is the ones that are really closer to our community. And when you look at the record of the Liberals and the Conservatives, they have been focusing in the middle of the pandemic, the big corporations. We hear about Trudeau's policies, and also Ford here in Ontario. They've been focusing on big corporations, not small businesses. So when you look at that aspect of it, you could appreciate the work that the NDP is doing in terms of speaking to you as a small businesses and addressing the important work that you do as small business entrepreneurs, because the Conservatives and Liberals have forgotten about the middle size and small businesses, because they are basically representing the big corporations. And that's also another perspective you need to hear and see also what is difference really between the conservatives and the liberals. In my opinion, there isn't much, but the liberals will tell you that we are progressive, and they're not. And it is also the same old story telling you that if you elect conservative, it's our term. Elect us as liberals. But I say that, and I say to Hamza and Fatima, there's another option, and that's a new democratic option available. And of course, also there are other parties, but I do believe that we have a best policy when it comes to climate justice, racial justice, economic justice, housing policy, long-term care policy, and home care, and also the climate. And also putting also seniors first, and also childcare issues. So, and when you hear strategic voting, they just want to take your vote for granted. Don't, and simply vote for your conscience and vote for your issues.
Vote for your conscience and vote for your issues. All right. As I wrap up now, I need predictions from you. Fatima, starting with you. It is Monday, September 20th, 9 p.m. or 9:01 p.m. and the election is closed. Who is the Prime Minister of Canada? Do we know the Prime Minister of Canada at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 or 12 a.m.? Prediction.
I don't know when we will know who will be our Prime Minister. I think we will remain with the current Prime Minister, whether it be a majority or minority government. I don't know. That I don't know. I'm not a very good gambler. For an investment person, I am a horrible gambler. So I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't have a crystal ball. I do think that not much will change. That's my prediction.
Not much will change. Hamza, what are your thoughts on that? Who is our Prime Minister?
Well,
on Monday, 9 p.m., 9:01.
9 p.m. we will. I mean, I don't think we'll get the results because of the mail-in ballots. But I think we're retaining minority government.
Do you agree, Honorable Hassan?
Well, I mean, I agree that the polls will be closing 9:30, and I think there isn't much really significant about the mail ballot, because they expected elections Canada 5 million, but they are saying that it's only 1 million and divided into riding across the coast to coast. Many ridings will be able to know immediately after 9:30. But I do agree that we are expecting a minority government, and that minority government is unknown at the moment because a lot of people, over 50% or more, are undecided, and they're going to make that decision on election day. So that's also a possibility of one way or the other, or even having a majority government, but most likely a minority government, but I cannot say who.
Interesting. Thank you so much for this conversation, for participating in this conversation. We appreciate everyone who is watching us here today. This is the African Alumni Association. We try as much as possible to elevate the immigrant voices. And as you go into the elections on Monday, everyone, as you have heard, is encouraging you to participate in the conversation, to participate in the election. Go and vote, whoever you want to vote, but go and vote. Participate in this election so that they know, they can see that you have participated, so they can hopefully be accountable with everything that they have talked about. Thank you so much for joining us. Wrap up, each and everyone. Wrap up in 30 seconds and wish everyone a good weekend, I guess.
Well, thank you, Henry, for having me, and thank you to my co-panelists, Fatima and Hamza. And I hope, I've learned a lot from my colleagues here today, and I look forward to having a productive conversations in the future.
Thank you so much. How about my friend Fatima?
Thank you very much for having me, for giving me a chance to speak, and thank you very much your honorable MPP, and Hamza, Mr. Hamza, Henry, of course, and the U of T Alumni Association. Everybody have a great weekend. Go volunteer for whomever you want to vote for. Go volunteer. Go pound the pavements for them. Go call in the vote, because that's what they need right now, because that is also another way to participate. And have a beautiful, wonderful, sunny weekend in Toronto.
Thank you. Hamza.
Thank you very much, Henry, and thank you to the U of T Alumni Association, African Alumni Association, and thank you, your honorable member of parliament, and thank you, Fatima, for educating me on some of the things I was filling in some of the gaps I was not aware of. Anyways, and I would suggest, I would want to tell the people, have a good weekend and try to participate. And it's a time we let our voices heard and all frustration. Just take the frustration to the ballot paper. Let the ballot decide what you think.
All right. Thank you so much again. Let the ballot decide. Again, my name is Henry Sally for the African Alumni Association. It's always a pleasure to have these conversations with you. I hope you are going to get out of your house and go and vote safely. Of course, don't forget your mask, and whenever you can, social distance so that you can stay healthy and take care of your family and friends. Have a great weekend. My name is Henry Sally for the African Alumni Association.